Hi, and thank you for streaming Stop Stigma, Start Healing, a podcast brought to you by Equitas Health and our mental health recovery services.
Hello, my name is Myles, and I'm your host of Stop Stigma, Start Healing, the raw and uncensored podcast where we talk openly and unapologetically about our lives as trans, lesbian, bi, gay, queer, and HIV-positive humans. Our goal is to stop the stigma that prevents us from getting the health care we deserve. Each episode will feature real people in community and in conversation and storytelling. And here's my disclaimer. The experiences shared here are valuable and important. They are based on the lives of those in this space and some of you who are listening. Prepare to be educated, shocked, seen, triggered, and informed. No matter your response, keep the conversation going. Start healing. So I'd like to welcome my guests today. Our topic is religion recovery. This is something that has come to my attention in the last few years of working in queer mental health care is the number of folks who have really traumatic experiences from their pursuit of a spiritual life, growing up and all that comes with religion. And so I am certainly not the expert on this. I invited some guests to join us today who have some lived experience with this that I think will really resonate with some of our listeners out there. And so that's where we're going to go today. And we are first going to go around the room, have our guests introduce themselves, give us your first name, your pronouns, and what do you want the people out there in podcast land to know about you? And I'll start over here.
My name is Rob. I go by he, him, or his. I actually, as a hairstylist, I've been for 20 years, and I work independently, but I was actually raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses from birth, and then I walked away from it when I was 19. Very sheltered life. We were, purposely kind of kept away from everything that I learned later on when I left was normal living in the world. So I actually had to learn to just kind of adjust myself to what was now normal because, for years, decades, I had been told that was the way that was not going to survive Armageddon. So, a lot of therapy that I, put myself through, and I still continue to go, but I've, definitely worked past that chapter in my life. But anyway, when Myles told me about this, I was actually excited to finally talk about it because I have those conversations with people, but this is a whole different platform to do it. So I'm actually very excited to be here. Yeah.
Thanks, Rob.
Hi, Siobhan, she, her, hers pronouns. I work in queer advocacy and organizing here in the community. And I was raised Pentecostal apostolic. And then I also attended a parochial school for 12 years. And that was a Nazarene-based school. So it was very restrictive as far as Christian tenets. I had prom with no dancing. If you can imagine a prom with no dancing, but their Nazarenes do not dance. So I was also very sheltered being in that space, growing up in a pretty religious household, as well as attending a religious school for 12 years. I was very sheltered, and then went to college. And that was amazing. Went to Howard University in Washington, D.C., and through that process, kind of fell away from the church, kind of experienced the world and all the things that I had been sheltered from, and have eventually come back to the church. I do consider myself to be a person of Christian faith. I believe I have a very healthy relationship with faith and with God. God is a very big part of my life, and I feel very affirmed by my God and my Creator and my LGBTQ identity, and I believe that my work in queer advocacy is actually part of my Christian witness.
Great. Thanks for being here, Shimon.
Well, thank you for having me on, Myles. I'm Eli. I use he, him pronouns. I work in the political realm of the world on campaigning, so it's a fast-paced lifestyle, but keeps me busy, keeps me meeting new people. I grew up rural southeast Missouri, town of about 7,000 people. I joke we had cows on one side, corn on the other, beans on the other side. So it was pretty much just me and my family out there. I was raised Lutheran Church, Missouri Senate, Sunday school every week, church every week. I think I can count on one hand the amount of church services I missed before I moved out of my parents' house, because we were very, very, very dedicated to it. We prayed before every meal, had Bible studies at our house. We were very committed Christians. And I went to a parochial school as well, and it was a Lutheran one, like I was raised. And we had religion classes that was required every term or semester, whatever you want to call it. And that was kind of my awakening to that there was a world outside of the worldview I'd been brought up in. Because even though the church I went to was mainstream, when we think about Christianity, the types of people that my family associated with were a little bit more on the fundamentalist side of the world, and speaking in tongues and the idea that the world's going to end in a certain amount of years, the doomerism that comes along with that. And once I made it to my senior year of high school, I was doing a lot of work out of the state with some of the advocacy I was doing, and just the realization of all the people that I was able to meet that way kind of woke me up to the idea that, hey, 70-80% of the world isn't going to burn in hell because they don't believe the exact same thing that I do. And that's when I had my full realization of my faith journey and how I started, and to where I now align myself today religiously.
Great. Thank you. Yeah. So glad you're here, Eli.
My name is Josh, pronouns he, him, his. I currently work in mental health, and that is a sort of a second career thing for me. I spent the first chunk of my working life as an adult working in the financial industry and banking and insurance. A lot of that transition had to do with also the way that my life was transitioning in terms of like my religious experience. I grew up in rural Southeast Ohio. We would occasionally go to like this small, tiny little country Baptist church. I mean, it literally looks like the little country white church with the cemetery on the side, and in retrospect, looks like something out of a Stephen King movie. But I remember like in a lot of the messages I internalized from that time, not that it was spoken about a lot, but I quickly picked up that, okay, being gay is not good. I have vivid memories of them pulling out this like embroidered end times chart and this cute little embroidered lake of fire. And that was like, no, I don't want any part of that. And I think just growing up in that community, I internalized a lot of just like, as I started to understand that I was different and what that meant in being gay. And so when I got older, I got involved in a fundamentalist, non-denominational church. And I asked them for help in getting rid of this gay thing, and they assured me that Jesus could help heal that part of me. And I spent the next 13 years of my life, from ages 20 to 33, on that journey of kind of trying to heal myself. And towards the end of that, thought I could try to help others also kind of make that break with being gay. And so I started learning. That got me out of my hometown, started coming to Columbus so that I could observe and learn from a program in Columbus that was doing that type of work. And it was that experience and seeing that play out in the lives of others, and seeing how unhealthy and damaging it was to them and their relationships, that kind of helped me see, like, I can't do this. I remember the last night I was there, and just kind of something snapped inside of me. I remember just sitting back, and literally the phrase that went through my head is, what the fuck am I doing? And coming from that kind of tradition, I didn't even really use language like that at that point. So I was like, I don't know what this means, but I can't keep doing this. And so that sent me on a bit of a journey. I eventually ended up reconnecting with a Methodist congregation and getting involved in some of their work to try to bring about change within that denomination. And now that they're going through their own sort of process with that. But that eventually led to me, my master's in counseling is actually from a Methodist seminary, because it was important for me that I go back and I be able to kind of work with some of these fragmented pieces that were still inside of me, and also to be able to help and support others in a mental health space when they are suffering from just the impact of religion and how that has impacted them either positively or negatively. And yeah, it led to a career change and a physical move in terms of where I live. And yeah, but ultimately I'm glad that I'm here.
Good. I'm glad you're here too, Josh, in lots of ways. So thank you all for sharing that. I wonder if we could go back around whatever order seems to make sense for you all. Talk a little bit about your coming out experience and how coming out if you came out while you were involved in your churches, how that was for you.
Well, I didn't actually come out during church. I officially, decided not to attend anymore. Probably towards the middle of my 19th year. But I started going to, gay clubs and stuff at 18. And there were a couple of people in the church that were of my age. And, it kind of was that whole thing. I thought that they, maybe wouldn't mind me sharing that, because, we grew up together as little kids, and I could tell that, and I wouldn't say I went to a gay club. I just said, I went to a club in, West Hollywood. And of course, they were just like, what? And they knew what that was. Yeah. And I could tell that, they weren't comfortable with it. And so that's when people started to really pull away from me. And I was like, I got to get out of here. So, but the way I had been lit or, raised, they instill a fear in you that if you leave, you won't make it financially, mentally, without the organization of Jehovah's Witnesses. And they had instilled that in me pretty hard. And I was just like, you know what? I got to find a way to get out of here. So I decided to tell my mom and dad that I was gay. I started going to raves when I was 19, and I needed to go through that, obviously. And I came home one night, and probably 5 a.m. And it was Sunday, so they were going to get ready to go to church. And I think typically we had to be there about 10 o'clock. So I remember around 7:30, my mom woke up and came in the room, and she's just like, "Are you? Can I talk to you?" I said, "Yeah." She's like, "Are you going to go today?" I said, "No." And I, was coming down off of ecstasy, and I wasn't tripping, but you could, still feel it in your system. And she just said, I need to talk to you real quick. And I said, sure. And you could tell where it was going. And she said, well, there's just been these guys calling here. Mind you, I'm going to be 49. So this is almost 30 years ago. So cell phones weren't really a thing. They were, these gigantic Casio keyboard looking.
With answering machines.
Right. So we had landlines.
Right.
And so she said, there's just these guys that keep calling here, and they just sound different. I said, yeah, how different? She goes, I don't know. There's something different about them. And I said, well, what's different? She goes, well, they sound like homosexuals. And I said, well, they are. And, she said, well, why are they calling here? I said, because that's who I associate with right now. And she goes, but you know how God feels about them. They'll be destroyed at Armageddon. And all I said is, would you love me any less if I was? And the waterworks started with her. And she called my dad in, who was the head elder of the church. And he said, well, why don't I have the other elders come, and we'll, use scripture and pray for Holy Spirit to help you, be rid of that. And I just said, I just want to be left alone. And so I knew it was going to happen. And so it took him less than 48 hours. And he came back in and said, so how do you feel about me, arranging this? And I said, I just want to be me, and I want you to be okay with it. And, I want you to love me regardless. And I said, and if you don't want to tell people, You don't have to. And, I've processed these memories and these thoughts, and I moved on from that. And I'm very, really, very just grateful and happy where I'm at right now. But, there are memories that still can trigger up emotion. And he just said, then you can't live here. So I packed what I could in, I think, 15 minutes. And I left, and I never went back to that house again. I've never seen them since. And then I cut them off when I was 25. That's when I started going to therapy. And I wanted to get rid of that religious influence still in me. So at that point, I wanted nothing to do with religion or God. And I still feel the same way in a healthy way. But also when I hear, Shaban, right, when I hear you talk about the faith is still important to you and God, I totally respect that. And I would never make it my mission to tell somebody, well, what if they did? It's just, I'm not here to do that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I'm here for myself and to make myself better through that whole experience. So I never have issues, when I hear that. But I wanted nothing to do with religion or God ever. I wanted to just find my own way into what I believed. And essentially what would make me a better person. So, I went to therapy, and he really guided me through it. And it took about 8-9 months. And I came to the conclusion that I needed to cut all of them off. So I did. And I told them on the phone that I couldn't talk to them again if that they were not going to support me. I said, I don't need money. I don't need anything like that. If you just can't learn to love me, I don't want to talk to you again. And so I never did. I never spoke to him again. My mom, I'm going to cut this short so you guys can talk. My mom, though, had called 3 months ago, and I hadn't talked to her in 24 years, and I knew what she was up to. And she said, well, because, I answer the phone like, hello, and well, this is your mother? I said, yeah, what's going on? She said, well, I just wanted to know why you don't want me to call you. And I said, well, I told you why. Well, I just thought that you should know, like, the family members that died. And I said, oh, okay, well, who died? And she told me, I don't even talk to these people anymore. And she did what she's always tried to do all those years. And she tried to, well, did you know Jehovah's Witnesses meet on Zoom now? And I said, and that's why you called. That is why you called me. So, I grilled her. And I said, listen, I said, I know you never listened to anything I've told you, but I said, I want you to hear me very clearly right now. And if you don't respect me, and if you cannot learn on some end to try to love me the way I deserve to be loved, I said, I don't want you to ever call me again. So, and the reality is that relationship with them is so disconnected. And it's a healthy statement that I'm going to make, because I know some people probably might hear it and, feel a bit of shock. But we are so disconnected. The only thing we have in common is DNA. That's it. And so, if I'm ever told, or the day that I'm told that they've passed, I won't attend the funeral, because to me, when you attend an event like that, it's you're reminiscing of the memories, the good ones that you've collectively had through the years. And that's not what that is. So I don't hate them. I don't dislike them. I don't, I don't wish the worst on them, but I don't want them in my life. They cause damage that I've worked through. And I told my mom, I said, you are not allowed to just pop in and out when you want to. Because you think you're ready to. I said, it doesn't work like that. So I made my own family. I feel like we're going to get into this conversation. I'm going to jump in, let somebody else jump in. And I'll talk about just other ways that I found my spiritual needs. And I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Rob. You want to go next?
I'm still thinking.
Okay. We can come back to you.
Oh, yeah, I'll go ahead.
Yeah.
I think for me, the idea of coming out there's been 3 different versions of it. I think there's coming out to yourself, there's coming out to your friends, and then for me, there was coming out to my family. And each one had its own individual struggles. And honestly, I think the hardest was coming out to myself, because you have to live with yourself forever. I mean, you can choose who you associate with and don't. But, you're stuck with you forever. And for me, the world I grew up in was that gay people will never live a happy life. They're always going to be damned to hell. They're going to live a life of misery. They'll never have success. They're never going to be able to succeed in life, make it to something better. They're always going to be unhappy. And, I remember growing up and my dad saying, oh, the reason why California is having these wildfires is because they let the gay marriage happen out there. They support gay people out there. It was to that level. And
Chemistry is a welcoming and affirming program for the LGBTQ plus community and anyone looking to stop or reduce their substance use. We offer one-on-one counseling for you on your recovery journey. Join us Mondays in person or online. To learn more and schedule your first visit, please give us a call at 614-340-6700. Once again, that number is 614-340-6700. Thank you.
I remember my parents would always listen to Christian radio. That was pretty much the only radio we were allowed to listen to. And, obviously you get your wonderful Christian radio talk shows about the dangers of being gay. And I just remember sitting there with my dad sometimes, because I would sit out with him in our workshop and we'd work on cars or whatever. And he would be talking about, oh, how disgusting is that? Do you know what they even do? And all of these kinds of things. And I was a kid. I mean, I was probably 10, 11 years old. And I was homeschooled up until high school. So I had a very sheltered life. I didn't know what gay was. I didn't know any of the terms besides gay until I was probably 13 years old. I had no idea about any of that stuff. And I knew something was different, but I never had a word for it. And this is really cheesy, but I think it's the power of the outside world having a positive influence, which is definitely the opposite of what they would say. But I remember when Born This Way by Lady Gaga came out. And there was that part of the song that's like, no matter gay, straight, or bi, lesbian, transgender. And I had no idea what any of those words meant. I had to Google it because the world I grew up in was, you don't say those words. You don't talk about that. And once I learned those words, I was like, oh, so that's what I've been feeling. That's what I've been living through. That's me. Because before that, I just knew I felt different. I had no idea what that different was. And once I came to that realization, I was like, okay, I mean, time to pray every night and cry to God every night about, can you change me? Can you fix me? Because I don't want to burn in hell forever. I don't want to live a life of misery. And I dealt with that on my own because I didn't have any friends that would understand. And all the friends I had were people that were in our fundamentalist Christian friend group. And none of them would ever understand that. I remember the TV show Glee was very popular then. And it was very controversial to watch that in the group we were in. And I know some of us would sneak watch it. And even the ones that would watch it would talk about, well, I wish they didn't have those gay people in it because this is so bad, so dangerous. And I guess that's when I knew it was like, okay, I can't talk to them about this. It was just me, So I found friends online. Twitter was probably like a lifesaver for me back then because it was the only community I'd ever found that I actually understood people. Because I didn't meet someone that identified as gay in person until my first year of high school. Never in my life before that. And at that point, I was honestly good with it myself. There was still that guilt and shame, but I accepted that's what it was. But when I walked into high school, I didn't know anybody. The private school we went to, most of the kids that went there from probably 30, 40 minutes away from me. But I never tried to hide it when I was there. I don't know what possessed me to do that because the school was very fundamentalist. We would have pastors come in for our weekly chapel meetings with the whole school assembly, and they would just rant and rave about homosexuality. Because if we remember, I think it was 2015 when same-sex marriage became illegal, or was it 2014 or 2015. So I was in high school during that. And I just remember how freaked out people were. One of my teachers said, and I'll never forget this, I was in a class and they said, it's better for someone to marry their cousin or their sibling than to marry someone of the same sex. And they said that in front of the whole class. So imagine little gay Eli, a child that had no one around them to support them or know them, and someone that you look up to, that you admire, say that to you. And that's, as I realized, I was like, yeah, I can be myself around my friends here, but even with that, one of my religion classes, they were talking about the evils of homosexuality, just the normal spiel about the diseases and how you're never going to be happy. Just the same thing I heard my entire life. And I texted one of my friends about it after school, and I said, don't you think that was a little harsh? It was a little off the deep end with that? And she texted me back. She's like, no, I think you need to repent and turn back so you're not going to go to hell. Wow. And the funny part of it is, though, because I can laugh about this now, I had screenshotted it to show some of my other friends. I accidentally sent the screenshots to her. Oh. So she was like, what is that for? I was like, oh, it was, I felt embarrassed then, but now I'm like, that was kind of a power move to accidentally do that. But that was my school environment, my home environment, and that was pretty much my entire life until I had a driver's license and could go places on my own. Because before then, everything was controlled. My parents would have to go over to my friend's house and meet their parents to make sure they went to church, to see what their religious beliefs were, to make sure they believed the right things about God and the right version of what kind of person Jesus is, the whole thing. And that's what led me not to come out to my parents officially until I turned, I think I was 22. So I'm 23 right now. So it's been about a year and a half or so since I did it. And I waited till now because I knew that the moment I did it, I would be on my own if I did it my way. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I will never be disrespected at this age. I will never be told to change. Because this is my life. I'm at the point where this is me, I'm happy with it. And I said, I'm not telling my parents until I can financially support myself. Because I knew that if I went out and told them when I was 13 or 14, because I kind of wanted to. I was like, I imagine, my mom loves me so much. My dad loves me so much. I could tell them anything and they'd be good with it. And then you hear the horror stories of other people. So I waited because I knew the moment I did it, I would be either conversion therapy, repent, all these things, or you're cut off, you're on your own. And I didn't want that. I want a life that I can be happy in. So I did that to protect myself. And it kind of, a lot of people will probably look and say, that's selfish to hide this from your parents all this time just for money. But I wanted to be able to get an education. I wanted to go to school. I want to be able to be successful in life, live somewhere, not be homeless. I wanted those normal things. And that was the only way I felt I could have it. And, my fears came true when I came out to my parents, because they said the first things that came out of their mouth over the phone were, so we can get you a Christian counselor. We can find we can help you through this. There's people out there that will guide you. This is the work of the devil in you right now. We have to get Satan out of you. And I'm just at the point now where I'm not even fazed by it. It's bullshit to me. And I had to actually mute myself on the phone because I was laughing as they were saying these things. Because it's just so outrageous. Once you're out of that fundamentalist ideology, you realize how crazy it sounds when you're telling other people. And I just, I couldn't deal with it. And I'm kind of where you are now with my parents' situation, because they constantly write me letters, try to call me, and, how can we work through this? What can we do to resolve this? And I told you respect me. And I told them when I came out, this is your one time to say these crazy things, because I know it can be a shock to deal with this. But after this, you have to respect me. This is my life. Whether or not you like it, that's up to you. But you cannot say these disrespectful things to me. You can't tell me I'm burning in hell and leading a horrible lifestyle, influenced and controlled by the devil anymore. And they keep saying it. So, at an arm's length now, because I have to protect myself, my health, my mental health, especially because the toll that takes on you is just, there's no way to describe it, I don't think.
Thanks for that. You feeling it yet? I saw some head nods.
Yeah, it's just about how to even tell the story of coming out, because I don't have a clean coming out story.
Most of us don't.
Yeah. So in high school, I will say, I never came out to anyone in high school. No one, none of my friends. I never felt safe doing that. It's because we would sell T-shirts, fundraisers. And I remember very distinctly one of the T-shirts saying, God made Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. And so you can imagine, that's not an environment in which that's going to be welcome. So I'm 42, so I didn't have the internet and all these different things, these outlets. And so what I knew about LGBTQ life, queer people, HIV, AIDS, any of that, I mean, literally that's all I knew. And the way that gay identity was presented to me was that it was sexual only, that this was an object of sexual desire. The idea of having a same-sex relationship was foreign to me. I did not know that gay people actually had relationships and got married and had kids and things like that. And growing up, that was very important to me. I wanted to get married and have a dozen kids. Like that was my thing. And I did not, while I had that desire sexually, that never translated in my head to I'm going to marry a woman and have kids with a woman. It was I'm going to have to deal with this perverse sexual desire that I have, try to pray it away, and then just go ahead and get married and do all those things. So growing up, I was a very heteronormative young woman, always dated, had all the boyfriends, went on to all the proms, all of those things. When I got to college, I was able to essentially say, okay, I can explore this sexual perversion. I can indulge this because I have this freedom. I have college. There's internet now. It's 2000. And so I was able to indulge in that a little bit, but even in college, because I went to an HBCU, a historically Black college or university. And I will say today, Howard is amazing on LGBTQ issues. In 1998 to 2002, not so much. And we knew who the gay students were, but they weren't in a gay association. They called it different things. And so it was not until college that I actually met another gay person. And then I remember in my sorority, the person I consider my sister, my best friend, came out as bisexual. To our line sisters, 12 people. And that was a moment. And I was like, whoa, you came out, you admitted this to people. This is amazing. And then I started going to the gay clubs with her because I was like, well, you're my friend. I'm going to go with you. Really, I just wanted to go to the gay clubs and see the girls.
So supportive.
I was so supportive, right? And so I was able to be the supportive friend, and not come out, right? And do that. So then I came back home for law school. And essentially went right back in the closet. So any outing that I had done during college went right back in the closet because I was home. I was with family. I was with all these people who expected certain things of me and knew me in a certain way. And it was time to get my career together, buckle down, get serious. I was in law school. And actually in law school, I had a child with a man, right? So I was doing the hetero thing. Yeah. And it was actually having that child that forced me to come out. So when my son was about 8 months old, my niece passed away. She was only 4 at the time. And that was a devastating moment. And for years, I had been questioning God. God, why do I have this perversion? Why do I have this desire? Please take it away. I prayed about it all the time. I was suicidal all through junior high and high school. I really wanted to get rid of this. This was a thing that I did not like in me. And then when my niece passed away, something broke. And I was like, you know what, God, we're going to have it out. And this is like the core of my faith. And I said, what are you doing? Who are you? What kind of God are you? You stole a 4-year-old ball of light and energy. I saw the light leave my grandparents' eyes. How could you be that type of God? And a God who would make me this way? Because I knew at that moment, I knew that I had been created with these desires. And I said, why? Why would you create me as something that you hate? Why would you create something that you hate? That doesn't make sense. And God's answer to me was, who told you that I hate you? And I said, well, your Bible said that I hate you, and everything that I've learned from your people, from your faith, has said that I hate you. And he said, I never said I hated you. And he asked me, who am I? He said, because that was my question to God. Who are you? And he gave it back to me. Who am I? Who am I to you? Who do you know me to be in your heart? And I knew at that moment, I said, you're my creator. That's all I knew about God, was that God was my creator. And so I held on to that. I was created, period. And I am an artist, and I know, and I create things. And I don't create anything I hate. I love what I create.
Yeah.
And so at that moment, I knew I was created, and I was loved, and I was not perverse. I was not going to hell. And God did not hate me or hate this thing in me, because God created me. And for years, that's all I had. For years, but I held on to it, and I knew it, and it allowed me to move through my life with a certain kind of confidence that I honestly did not have before. And it allowed me to have a relationship with the person who's now my wife, and to get married and all those different things. So, but despite that, so I kind of came out to God, essentially,
Yeah.
And despite that, I still couldn't come out to the humans in my life. I came out to friends and cousins, and I started dating women kind of openly. And still there was this block with my family. And I will tell you, I did not come out to my dad until I was engaged and planning my wedding. And I love my dad. That is my best friend. I love him. And I wrote him a letter on my birthday. And I said, Daddy, what I want for my birthday is for you to walk me down the aisle at my wedding to a woman. And he said yes. And I knew he would say yes. And of course he said yes, because my dad is amazing. And I just didn't want to disappoint him. I was still worried about shattering this ideal that these folks had for me. So I was able to do that with my dad, have a wonderful relationship with my dad. My dad has a wonderful relationship with my wife. My mom's another whole other subject. My mom and I have not had a relationship really to speak of since I married my wife. Since I essentially came out, my wife started coming to my son's games and really doing the parenting thing and everything. And I want to say that more than the coming out, even though I never said the words to my mom, hey, Mom, I'm a lesbian, I'm marrying a woman, the impact on my life has been the same. What I feared has been the same. And I will say that while the lack of her presence in my life is definitely a loss, and I feel that hurt, I do have other moms, I do have other people, other mom figures. What really hurts me is her withdrawal from my son's life. Because my wife would come to my son's games, he's 8, 7, playing soccer, baseball, all those different things, because she was parenting him. She loved him. She had been in his life. I married my best friend, so my wife had actually been in my life through all of this, and loved him and was supporting him as a parent, as they should have. And my mom literally just could not be in the same space with us. And so completely disconnected out of his life. And that's the impact, that's the loss that I feel. That's the loss that I feel every single day, even more than the loss in my own life. That despite, she lost one grandchild to a tragic accident, and then lost another grandchild by choice.
Yeah.
And it's hard not to feel, and while I know that wasn't my choice, that was her choice, she's a grown woman, I understand that it was, in fact, my choices that influenced her choice. And I know that her choices are based in religion. They are based in faith. They are based in apostolic faith. They are based in a belief that I am going to hell. I pray for her. I am a mom. I don't want to believe that my child is going to hell. I know what that feels like. Like, I can understand very personally what that would feel like, and to have that fear that your child is going to burn in hell. And that makes me so sad for her. Yeah. I don't hate her. I don't dislike her. I don't want to say I pity her, but my gosh, I wouldn't want to live that as a mom. So I'm okay. I have a great relationship with faith. My wife has a great relationship with faith as a non-binary person raised Catholic. But we do a lot of work. We have very open conversations about God. I am a person, I go to God. I wrestle with God. That is why I have a relationship with God right now, because I stopped allowing other people to tell me who God is and who God was in my life and how God felt about me. And I went straight to God and I wrestled with him to get those answers and to be where I am today. So that's why I'm so bold and proud of my faith, because my gosh, I worked for it. Yeah. and I really had to get here with it. I will say though that it's still hard to find a faith community.
Yeah.
And that is something that that still is hard, even in affirming churches. It can be hard to find a faith community that really understands what it is to live in a queer life and live a life where I can't be in a quiet faith community. I almost need to be in a faith community that's going to advocate for me, because so much of my faith is about advocating for and working for God's children, God's people, God's queer people.
Yeah.
Right? And I need a faith community that's going to have that same passion and advocacy mindset that I do.
Nice. Great. Josh.
Okay. I also do not have a neat and tidy coming out story. so I'm going to try to tell this as linearly as I can. So one of the things I was thinking about as I drove here today, and I've heard other people reference, media influences that they had growing up or throughout life. And so I'm 49. I was born in 1976. So a lot of my formative, the 80s, there was a lot in there and as I was thinking back, what did I have to look for? I mean, I was able to think Klinger from MASH and what the hell was I don't know. I was thinking, I remember, there being an episode of Knight Rider where there was a character who was, I believe, at the time transsexual and being and also...
And the car was gay.
Well, we can have that conversation. Yeah. And I also think of I was trying to remember on the way out here, I think it was the Blue Oyster, the gay bar from the Police Academy movies.
Oh, yeah.
So these are the things I'm I didn't see any kind of a path that looked like any kind of a meaningful life or a quote unquote normal life for me. And I remember also having that moment, I think I was around 13 or 14, I remember alone in my bedroom. I don't think anyone else could have heard me, but still just silently mouthing the words that I'm gay. Just moving my lips. I'm like, okay. And as that started to settle in, and I know that pushed me at that time in a very, I very much at that point, I'd kind of rejected any idea of God at that point and kind of pushed me into a very atheistic space. And I also remember during that time, I have a very distinct memory. I remember the setting. I remember the person that this was said to. But I remember my dad making the statement that if he ever learned that either of his sons were gay, that he would kill them. I'm out to my dad now. We don't have the best relationship around this. I no longer think that he would try to end my life, but at that age, that made quite an impression. I'm like, okay, this isn't something I can be. This is something wrong in me. And so I very much internalized that message. It was very...
Did that stem from his faith? Or it's complicated in that, so I mentioned that tiny little country Baptist church that I grew up, and we went to occasionally, but my dad grew up in that church. And it's interesting to me that him growing up
like in the 60s and 70s, that he very much resented. He got a lot of criticism, about what he was wearing, and your hair's too long, and there was and so he was very resentful of this rules and structure of you have to fit this mold in order to be an acceptable. And so it was interesting to me that you also have this issue with the structure and people telling you who you're going to be. And yet I also understand that when faced with something that was outside of his comfort zone, that's what he reached back to, and that became his structure to, my dad never spoke to me about the Bible until I said the words, I think I'm gay. So very young, I had this internalized message that this is not good, can't be this, have to keep this part of my life secret, hidden. So when I graduated high school in 1994. In 1996, I got involved with this fundamentalist, non-denominational church, and I had been going there for a couple of months, and I remember this traveling, singing evangelist person came and sang and spoke at the church. I remember at the end of his performance presentation, he called people forward down to the altar, and he asked if anyone had a mountain in their life that they felt that they could not get over, to come forward for prayer. And I hadn't come out to anyone at the church at that point, and I walked forward, and he and some elders from the church had come up and were praying for people. And I just remember in my head, please, please, please do not ask me what this mountain is. I do not want to say it. I want the prayer. I want this, but I can't say it. And he didn't, and he prayed for me. And I remember thinking okay, God's going to help me with this. Good. So I reached out to, one of the girls in the church that I had become friends with, and arranged to have lunch with her a couple of days later. Her name was Rachel. And I remember, us having lunch in her parents' kitchen. We had gotten McDonald's. We're just sitting there eating food. And I'm telling her, I think I was already in my head, well, I was gay. But he prayed for me. And her conclusion at the end of our conversation was, you should tell the pastor. And I'm like, the hell I should. Why is that the next logical step? But so I freaked out for a couple of days. I remember also back to days of landlines. I don't think I had a cell phone at that point. I called the church office a couple times, hung up, finally called, got the church secretary, scheduled a time to meet with him. I remember being terrified through that entire meeting, and it took me forever to get the words out. I have this very vivid memory. I remember at the time I was wearing these white Air Jordans with the Carolina blue accents and stuff, and I just remember most of the time just staring at my shoes because I couldn't look at him. And then finally, when I was able to get the words out, he said, okay. He's like, well, I thought it might be something like this. He said, I figured it was either this or that you were caught up in drugs. In retrospect, I'm like, well, that's an interesting, anyway, but but afterwards, he was like, your sin is no different than anyone else's. I love you. God loves you. God can actually absolutely help you with this. And then it's so that felt very warm and accepting. But then it was a wet blanket thrown on me, because his next words were, but you shouldn't tell anybody else, because other people aren't going to accept this. I know that God sees all sin the same, but people don't. And so I'm like, so I still have to keep this secret and feel like there's something wrong with me.
He did label it a sin as well.
He did. He did label it a sin. He did label it a sin.
Laid a lot of stuff on this.
Yeah.
Really set the groundwork.
Well, and to be fair, at the time, I would have labeled it a sin.
Sure.
Yeah, and I did proactively say, I want help with this. So, and I think, as weird as it is, looking back on it, I think I absolutely have lingering impacts from that time of my life. I think the trauma and impact would have been much worse if I hadn't gone into it voluntarily. Anyway, but I ended up staying in that for the next 13 years of my life. I ended up being involved in leadership at the church. There was a church that used a lot of multimedia, so I was very much involved in the media production stuff. We did some like short films and other things for use in the services. I had a team of people that reported to me.
Specifically around sort of praying the gay away?
No. My role at the church was pretty much around like the media stuff. Okay. It was only towards the end of that time that I started thinking that, we had a couple of young men start coming to the church who were in our youth group who were gay and were actually dating each other. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is my mission field has arrived. It has come to me. I can help these young men and help them reach this pinnacle of achievement that I thought I had reached. And so I thought, I need to know how to do this. And it took a while for me to persuade the pastor because he was very much of the mindset that like, no, all sin is equal. We're not going to have a specialized ministry for one particular sin because they're all the same. We don't have a special, group for any other. But then finally he was like, okay, I think this is important enough that we need to let you do this. And so on Sunday nights, I would start traveling to Columbus to a church that's still there. A couple of years ago, took a friend and just stood outside of it because I'm like, I just need to come back here and know that I'm strong enough to come back here and that this place no longer has any power over me. And I would go there and now working in the mental health field and having been to these meetings function largely like 12-step meetings. Like we would sit at a table, we would go around. The group that I was in was the men's group. There was someone from the church that was there to lead a women's group if women ever showed up, but they never did while I was there. So, but every week the men would go around the table and each of them would have to share how their sexual brokenness had manifested itself that week. And some of these men were married. They had many of the things, they had children, they had many of the things in their life that I thought, if I have these things, I'll be happy. And it was just like that moment. One of the men in the group that was married, had kids, just fell apart one night. And the reason that he fell apart was that he shared later that the only way that he was able to have sex with his wife was by fantasizing about a man while he did so. And I was like, the absolute dishonesty of that just broke me. I'm like, I can't do this. This is absolutely a lie. And no judgment on him, but I'm like, I can't do this. And so that was my breaking point. That was my what the fuck am I doing moment. And it took me a while after that. At that point, I had come out to my mom a couple of years after I started going to the church. And again, yes, she cried. She blamed herself. This is my fault. I somehow did this. I'm like, no. And at that time, it's like I wanted it to be like this joyful disclosure. I'm like, listen, I've gained victory over this thing in my life. I want you to celebrate with me. And it just dissolved her to tears. And she started blaming herself for the fact that I had had to keep that a secret for so long. And then I never did come out to my dad because of the things that he had said. And so when I finally did come out to both of my parents in my early 30s, and I said, I think that I'm gay, because even then I was still afraid to just flatly say, I am gay. My dad sat in silence for a few moments. And then he said, I can't even stand to look at you. And he got up and walked out of the room. He and I didn't speak for a couple of days after that. And then when we finally did talk, for years after that, our conversations were limited to, how's work going? How's your car? We do have more conversations now. We still don't talk about that. My father is really the only person in my family that is not accepting. I ended up eventually, I did get connected to a Methodist church, started coming to Columbus. About a year after getting connected to the church, I also started getting involved in like queer advocacy. I got involved with Equality Ohio. About a year after that, I hosted an event for Equality Ohio in my hometown of Zanesville. There was a newspaper there. It was the local newspaper. They wanted to interview me about that event. I was terrified. And at the same time, I'm like, I don't want anyone else who lives here to have to feel the way that I have felt living here all of this time. So yes, I will do this interview. I still thought it's just going to be a short little thing. It'll be buried somewhere at the back of the newspaper. Nope. Next morning, it was top of the front page. So that kind of took care of coming out to the rest of my family.
As my mother would say, the Lord works in mysterious ways.
Yeah, I mean, it gave me an expedited coming out. And that also opened the door for a lot of family to reach out and express support. And for some family members, it's just sort of been this like awkward thing that like, I think they know. Sometimes comments will be made, but like, I'm like, well, it's fine. I've had to accept for other people, my father included, you know, to appreciate the aspects of our relationship that we do have that are good. And I have to just let that part of his journey be his journey. It was both through doing my own work in therapy and through helping others with their journey. It's been helpful for me to learn to let go that I can't manage this process for him. Yeah. This has to be his process.
Yeah.
I love him. I believe he loves me. And we will, you know, I don't know.
If you use methamphetamines and are looking for harm reduction or sobriety options, Gravitas might be for you. Gravitas is a welcoming and affirming treatment program for gay men, men who have sex with men, and folks in the trans community who use meth. We offer counseling and LGBTQ plus centered care for you on your recovery journey. To learn more and schedule your first visit, please call us at 614-340-6700. That is 614-340-6700.
I've also had the benefit, largely through the advocacy work and like the church involvement that I've had, to speak to gay men who are decades further along than me on this journey, and had the benefit of being able to learn through them that often these relationships with parents and family members, they do have to be measured in decades. Mm-hmm. They often aren't measured in weeks, months, even it takes time.
Sure.
And even though something is where it is now, that doesn't mean that that's where it stays forever. So anyway.
I'm so impacted by your stories. I'm looking at my questions like, per usual, I plan a lot to do in these episodes, and your stories, they just needed to be out there. I need people to hear these stories. There's probably thousands of these when I think of just people in Ohio listening, especially in some of the more red counties, but certainly in the blue and the purple areas of the state as well. It's, I think it's so important for people to hear these stories. I'm so impacted by your attempts to try to find some healing and make some sense of it in those faith-based communities. And it sounds like most of you found that after you left those spaces. And that's unfortunate, and I think beautiful at the same time, that it sounds like you've all found a way to where you need to be in your own journey. We only have a few more minutes left. I do want to talk about anything around healthcare that would be especially important for people listening. What to do, what steps to take, where to go, what was helpful for you. Yeah.
Also, go ahead. No. Well, I was going to say, also leading up to this, one of the things I was thinking about is I remember the first time still living in Southeast Ohio that I went for STI testing at the Muskingum County Health Department and being terrified of that because of just the stigma in the community itself. It's a small town. It feels like everybody knows each other. And the staff there was amazing.
Great.
And incredibly accepting, and so it ended up being a great experience. But yeah, like that would, and I also know shortly after I'm currently on prep. Prior to starting prep, I was seeing just a doctor, general population doctor. I remember after starting the medication, and I'm like, well, I should tell my doctor I'm on this medication. And I remember him appearing to me to get very awkward after I made that disclosure. And in my head, I remember the thought process, like, you don't know this, buddy, but you just got fired. I need to be able to have these conversations with my doctor. And I think that it's so important to find providers that you can do that with.
Yeah. Well, in answer to your question, for me, I think the part that I had left out, we'll just take a few seconds. Like, I knew I was gay when I was 4. I didn't know the words. Yeah. I just knew that I liked boys, and I didn't fight it. So when I would get a gift, like a truck, I would just kind of throw it behind me and grab my sister's doll when she wasn't looking. And I even as young as that age, I didn't know the verbs for it. I didn't know the words to describe it. I just knew I wanted to learn to be okay being that way. And obviously, at a young age like that, you don't know what's going to happen, as years come. And I think at 13 is when I started mentally to disconnect from the church as much as possible. Even though I didn't make it visibly obvious to people, inside my mind, I would, daydream about fashion shows or whatever George Michael video was, playing at the time. And, it's interesting listening to the 3 different stories here in the journeys. And so for me, I guess I would like to tell, anybody listening to this that you will find your way that, works for you. And I guess in a manner that makes you comfortable at the speed you need to move to do it. For me, I thought it was best that for me to completely learn to finally be comfortable being gay and not suppress any part of it whatsoever. That I needed to remove myself from all religion, all thought of God, and not just my parents, but my brother and sister as well. And even at that point, I sought out a therapist who actually specialized in leaving religious organizations. And that was his specialty. So he also dealt with, drug addiction, because I had gone into meth, pretty hard at that time as well. And that's what I thought was the best path for me to go to, was to learn how to disconnect. So, my journey with what I did, it's a harsh one for people to do physically. I understand that. I think, though, I was just so mentally I was so ahead of where I was actually at physically. I was just ready to do it. You know what I mean? I wasn't even going to how can we do this and keep the relationship alive? I was like, no, I need to part ways with them. Because it had that much influence where I was, still feel the smallest amounts of guilt and of shame. And even though they were a very small percentage, maybe less than 5, it was still existing. And I was like, I can't do this. I do not want to do this. I just want to be proud of who I am. And I realized having them in my life and, in religion and God, it was going to continue to suppress me. And I just was like, I don't want to live like that anymore. So, you ultimately, I feel like, you have to make the decision of, for me, it was removing people. And I'll tell you what, you do it the first time, you get really good at it. And I have continued to live my life like that. And I can honestly sit here and tell all of you, even when I dealt with a drug addiction that was, it became, what's the word? Functioning addiction. It went on for 20 years. But, side note, functioning, we tend to shape our life around the drug so that we can go longer doing it without people knowing. So that's why that went on that long. But that was the biggest battle that I had to overcome. But even at that point, I was finally free of the religion. I was finally free of my parents. I was finally free of the influence. And it was just a whole new world, and it felt great to finally just be you. And I don't know that, I don't know that I have ever had somebody judge me to my face. Obviously when I was 18, 19, somebody saying, fag or something like that. But I guess I don't encounter that because I think people just can sense the confidence in you that you are like, wow, this is Rob. He is proud to be gay. I am unapologetic about it. And I'm unapologetic about anything that I ever did because I never did anything to hurt anybody. You know, even with addiction, it was just my shit that I was dealing with. You know, I didn't drag anybody into it. I never had anybody enable me. And I just, you know, I guess really just would encourage somebody if there's a deep struggle, you know, to finally be you and to be gay and to still feel like you're getting pulled with religion and family. You know, sometimes you have to cut people off. And, you know, you can decide at that point, since you are in control of that, you know, time has passed, maybe I should reach out to my parent again. You can decide that. I chose not to do it. But, you know, so it's also not the end of the world with relationships like that. But I feel like in the position I'm in, though, if there's any, you know, repairing or reparation that's going to come out of that, I'm not waiting for it. If that's something that they decide they want, and I say this in a healthy manner, they can do all the work. I'm not doing any of it because they destroyed it. I didn't do anything to it. So, and that's kind of a sum, of, I guess, some advice to give, even though it sounds kind of harsh.
Siobhan, Eli?
Yeah, I would say I find that faith spaces, even affirming faith spaces, still have a real tough time with sex and sexual health. You know, I've definitely had people tell me that are affirming that my being a lesbian is an issue of sexual morality. And it's not. Let me be very clear about that. There's nothing sexually immoral about my relationship, my consensual relationship with my wife. But I think that stems from the church's inability to have a healthy relationship with sex. And I, you know, being in a parochial school for 12 years, the sex ed was ridiculous. You know, and I put very big quotation marks around ed there. But let me tell you, and for people of faith, I think I need them to hear, not telling kids about sex isn't stopping them from having sex. And you were a teenager and you know this. So I don't know why it's so hard for faith spaces and people of faith to understand that and get their heads wrapped around it. You're not going to stop kids from having sex by not telling them about sex. You're just going to encourage them to do it in unhealthy and unsafe ways. And so if you really, you know, as a parent, I've had a very open relationship with my child about sex because my relationship with sex was so unhealthy because I was not told anything. I wasn't introduced to a condom until I was damn near 20 years old. And that's ridiculous, right? So, I think faith spaces, in addition to, I think it's kind of all wrapped up into this issue of LGBTQ identity. And I think it stems, honestly, it's not so much the identity that they have a problem with. It's just that they have not gotten real and gotten comfortable about sex. And let me be very clear. God created sex. Sex is part of a healthy life. And Christians, I believe people of faith can engage in sex and do so in healthy ways and in ways and that the church can be part of that. The church can encourage healthy, safe sex for people of faith and that they have a responsibility to do so and that most churches, most faith communities are absolutely falling down on that responsibility.
Thank you. I'd like to go to your church. You want to take us home, Eli?
Yeah. Well, I think for any young queer people out there, please just take care of yourself is what I would say, especially when it comes to safe sex, because I had really similar experience to you. The sex ed at my school was, here's an assignment on all the different STDs, do a presentation about them. If you have sex before you get married, you're going to get them and your life will be miserable. That was, There was nothing about condoms, birth control, nothing. So I might get banned from my school for the future reunions for saying this, but I was the kid that was giving condoms out in high school. Because it's obvious there were so many people having sex that were too ashamed to ever admit it, that were too ashamed to go to a store and buy a condom, that were too ashamed to ask their partner to do it. So when there was someone that was having sex that I knew they were, I would offer it to them and I would drop it to them at school. It's like, if the school's not going to do the work, someone has to. I mean, there's no need to have a bunch of babies running around at your private school. I mean, it's not a good image for the school either, but
it happens. We
Yes.
had a lot of
Yes.
teenage pregnancies at my school. Yeah.
Yeah. And when it comes to just taking care of yourself overall, I would say society as a whole is not looking out for us. I mean, our health is, unfortunately, only we can take care of ourselves fundamentally, because even in affirming groups like you were talking about, there's still that stigma and fear. And Josh, like you said about your doctor, I had a very similar experience, as I have a doctor right now that's gay himself, and he's super great talking about anything. But I went and saw a doctor at OSU a couple months back, and he put himself in the corner of the room when he was talking about things, and he would not make direct eye contact, and he was mumbling and looking down. And there's just that shame that brings to you. You're like, what did I do wrong? What's wrong with me? So find yourself a good affirming doctor. Ask your gay friends about, who do you see? Get on PrEP. I don't care if you're abstinent right now. I don't care if you have one sexual partner that you've been in a relationship for the last 5 years. Protect yourself. Take care of yourself. All it takes is one time for something to slip up and happen. Just take care of yourself. Get tested regularly. I know growing up, I was like, testing is the end of the world. Why would I ever need that? It's immoral, the judgment that comes with it. I was in high school running around trying to get tested and no one would test me, because growing up in rural America, there's just not a lot of resources. And I think it's fundamentally not our problem that exists like that, but it's something we have to go the extra mile, unfortunately. But I implore you to go the extra mile, because we are at higher risk, and only we can take care of ourselves fundamentally at the end of the day. So just be safe. It's okay to have fun. It's okay to go out there and explore your sexuality, but just do it the right way.
Thank you.
And well, I feel like I should jump in real quick, just because I mentioned PrEP. Eli mentioned PrEP. Mm-hmm. Sadly, there's still a lot of people who don't know what PrEP is. Mm-hmm. So, but PrEP is as simple as it's a once daily pill that creates like a 99.9% immunity to HIV. And as I know, is either here or will be soon, like a 3 or 4 month injectable that you don't have to like do anyway. But it's a way to like just protect yourself against at least one STD that's out there.
Great. Thanks for that. So we are out of time. There's so much more on this topic that we need to talk about. And if they give us funding for 10 more episodes, I want you all to come back for like 5 of them, because there's so much I wanted to get into. And your stories are so rich. And unfortunately, this is just a small slice. I mean, I think of other religions that aren't represented here today. We got a small, tight little space, and you were willing to come out to the edge of town to share these stories. So I appreciate that. I think people at home listening or in their cars are probably also appreciating it. But keep the conversation going. Get connected. Use the internet. There's lots of really good stuff out there. There are good things happening. People are finding places that feel affirming. Find those for yourself. Find good health care and get connected. Thank you.
Thank you for streaming Stop Stigma, Start Healing. For additional information on our support groups, please visit us at equitashealth.com/start healing.